The transport ship shook as it left hyperspace near the massive military station called Nexus Prime. Lehana pressed her face against the small window and watched the huge structure grow larger as they approached. The station looked like a giant metal flower with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. Lights blinked along its surface and smaller ships moved around it like tiny insects. "Would you look at that thing?" Kim Tae said from the seat next to her. His voice was tight with worry. "I heard it can hold over 1,000,000 beings at once." Hana yawned and leaned back in her chair. "It is pretty big," she said without much interest. Around them, the other human soldiers from Earth were talking in excited or nervous whispers. Most had never been off their home planet before. For Hana, this was just another assignment. Commander Yawned walked down the narrow aisle between the seats. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. "Listen up, everyone," he said in his deep voice. "We are about to dock with the most important military station in the galaxy. Earth is the newest member of the Galactic Defense Coalition. What we do here will decide how the other species see humanity for years to come." The transport pilot, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, announced over the speaker system that they would dock in 10 minutes. Hana watched through the window as the docking bay grew closer. She could see other ships from different worlds already parked inside. Some looked like Earth ships but bigger. Others had strange shapes she had never seen before. "Remember," Commander Yoon continued, "we are here to learn and to show that humans can work with our new allies. Some of these species have been part of the coalition for hundreds of years. They know things about war and fighting that we are just beginning to understand." Kim Tae shifted nervously in his seat. "Sir, what if we cannot keep up with them? I heard that some of these alien species are much stronger and faster than humans." Yoon looked at him with a calm expression. "Private Kim, you trained for 3 years to get here. You passed every test we gave you. Trust your training and do your best. That is all anyone can ask." The ship shuddered as the docking clamps grabbed hold of it. Through the window, Hana could see alien beings walking around on the station. Some were tall and thin with too many arms. Others were short and covered in what looked like armor plating. A few had wings or tentacles instead of arms and legs. The airlock door opened with a loud hiss. Commander Yoon stepped out first, followed by the 20 human soldiers who had been chosen for this program. Hana was near the back of the group, still looking around with mild curiosity. The docking bay was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Hana could not see the top of it. Hundreds of beings from different worlds were moving around, loading and unloading ships or just walking from place to place. The air smelled strange, like metal, and something else she could not identify. A group of alien soldiers was waiting for them. The one in front was nearly 3 meters tall with 4 muscular arms and dark green skin. His uniform was covered with medals and rank insignia. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. "I am Captain Vextar of the Krathan Military Corps," he announced. "I will be your primary instructor during this training program." His 4 eyes looked over the human group with what seemed like disappointment. "So these are the famous humans we have heard so much about." Commander Yoon stepped forward and saluted. "Sir, I am Commander Yoon Dae of the Earth Defense Forces. These are our best soldiers, ready for training." Captain Vextar walked slowly along the line of human soldiers. He was so tall that even the biggest humans only came up to his chest. His 4 arms moved independently as he examined each person. When he reached Hana, he stopped and looked down at her. "You seem very relaxed for someone about to begin the most difficult military training in the galaxy," he said. Hana looked up at him and shrugged. "I suppose so, sir." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps you do not understand what you have gotten yourself into, human." He moved on down the line without waiting for an answer. After he had looked at all the humans, Captain Vexistar returned to the front of the group. "You will be training alongside soldiers from 11 other species," he said. "Each species brings their own natural advantages to combat. The Veltari have perfect coordination and can move as one mind. The Shardun have skin harder than most metals. The Garathi can survive in any environment. And the Krathan," he gestured to himself, are the finest warriors the galaxy has ever produced. He paused and looked at the humans again. What exactly do humans bring to this alliance? You are slow compared to most species. You are weak compared to most species. Your lifespans are short and your technology is primitive. Why should we waste our time training you? Kim Tae's face turned red with embarrassment. Several other humans looked angry or upset. Hana just yawned, covering her mouth with her hand. Captain. Vextar noticed the yawn and his expression grew dark. Am I boring you, human? Not at all, sir, Hana replied calmly. I am just tired from the long trip. Perhaps a few weeks of proper training will wake you up, the captain said with a cold smile. Report to Barracks Level 7. Training begins at 0600 tomorrow. Try not to embarrass your entire species on the first day. The humans were led through corridors that seemed to stretch for kilometers. The station was like a small city floating in space. They passed training rooms where alien soldiers practiced combat moves that looked impossible. In one room, insect-like beings moved in perfect formation, changing direction instantly as if controlled by a single mind. In another, crystalline, creatures were hitting each other with weapons that would have killed most living things. This place is incredible, Kim Tae whispered to Hana as they walked. Look at all these different species working together. Hana nodded absently. She was watching a group of 6-armed aliens practicing with energy weapons. Their movements were fast and precise, but something about their technique seemed inefficient to her. She could see at least 3 ways they could improve their stance and targeting, but she kept these thoughts to herself. The human barracks were clean and simple. Each soldier had a small room with a bed, desk, and storage locker. The walls were made of gray metal and there were no windows. Hana unpacked her few belongings and lay down on her bed. The mattress was harder than what she was used to on Earth, but she had slept on worse. Kim Tae knocked on her doorframe. Are you nervous about tomorrow? He asked. Hana looked at him from her bed. Not really. It is just training. Just training. Did you see those Krathan soldiers? They move so fast I could barely follow them with my eyes, and Captain Vextar looked like he could break all of us in half without even trying. Hana sat up and yawned again. Kim, you worry too much. We will do our best and see what happens. That is all we can do. But what if we fail? What if we prove that humans really are not good enough to be in the coalition? Everyone back home is counting on us to succeed. Hana stood up and patted Kim on the shoulder. Then we fail and go home. The world will not end. She walked past, him toward the bathroom. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day. That night, as the station's artificial lights dimmed to simulate nighttime, Hana lay in her bed listening to the sounds of the huge structure around her. She could hear the hum of engines and life support systems. Sometimes footsteps echoed in the corridors as alien beings went about their business. She was not worried about the training that would begin tomorrow. She had been through difficult training before, and she always found ways to adapt and overcome challenges. What interested her more was the chance to learn about these other species and their fighting methods. Every species seemed to have their own strengths, but she wondered if they also had weaknesses that others had not noticed. As she drifted off to sleep, Hana smiled slightly. Tomorrow would be interesting, even if Captain Vextar did not think much of humans. She had a feeling that there would be some surprises in store for everyone. The training alarm sounded at exactly 0600 hours, filling the barracks with a loud buzzing noise that made Kim Tae jump out of his bed. Hana opened her eyes slowly and stretched. She had been awake for the past 10 minutes, listening to the sounds of the station coming to life around them. The human soldiers gathered in the corridor outside their rooms, all wearing the standard coalition training uniforms. The gray and blue outfits were made from some kind of advanced fabric that felt strange against their skin. Commander Yoon had told them the uniforms could regulate body temperature and even stop small weapons fire. Everyone ready, Commander? Yoon asked as he joined them. He looked as calm and professional as always, but Hana noticed he was carrying a small medical kit. That probably meant he expected some of them to get hurt today. They made their way to Training Bay Alpha, following signs in multiple alien languages. The bay was huge, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows high above. The floor was covered with different surfaces: sand, metal grating, rough stone, and some materials that Hana did not recognize. Dozens of alien soldiers were already there, arranged in groups by species. The insect-like Veltari stood in perfect lines, not moving at all. The crystal beings called Shardun reflected the bright lights in rainbow patterns across their bodies. Near the far wall, a group of furry creatures with 6 legs were doing warm-up exercises that looked like a complex dance. Captain Vextar stood in the center of the bay with several other instructors. When he saw the humans arrive, he pointed to an empty area near the back. "Humans will observe first," he announced in his grinding voice. "You need to understand what real soldiers can do before you embarrass yourselves trying to keep up." The first demonstration was by the Veltari. 20 of them moved onto the main training area and suddenly began moving as one being. They flowed across obstacle courses like water, never hesitating or making mistakes. When one Veltari encountered a barrier, the others would boost it over or create a bridge with their own bodies. They completed a course designed for individual soldiers in half the expected time. The Veltari share a group mind during combat, Captain Vextar explained to the assembled soldiers. They can coordinate attacks and movements with perfect precision. No human military formation has ever achieved such unity. Kim Tae whispered to Hana, "How are we supposed to compete with that?" Hana watched the insect soldiers with interest. Their coordination was impressive, but she noticed they all made the same mistakes at the same time. When one member of the group made a poor decision, they all followed it without question. That could be a weakness in certain situations. Next came the Shardun crystal beings. They were asked to demonstrate their defensive capabilities. The instructors brought out weapons that could cut through steel plates and fired them at the volunteers. The energy beams and projectiles bounced off the Shardun, without leaving so much as a scratch on their crystalline skin. Nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons, Captain Vextar said with obvious pride. The Shardun can walk through enemy fire that would destroy entire human battalions. The demonstrations continued, with each species showing off their natural advantages. The Garathi proved they could breathe poisonous gas and survive in temperatures that would kill most other beings. The Nexari showed how their tentacle arms could manipulate a dozen tools at once with perfect control. Finally, Captain Vextar himself stepped forward to demonstrate Krathan combat abilities. He was handed 4 different weapons: a plasma rifle, an energy sword, a projectile launcher, and something that looked like a metal whip with electricity crackling along its length. "The Krathan have reflexes 10 times faster than the galactic average," he announced. "Our coordination allows us to use multiple weapons simultaneously with deadly effectiveness." What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Captain Vextar became a blur of motion, using all 4 arms independently to fire, slash, and strike at targets around the training area. Targets that had seemed impossible to hit were destroyed in seconds. The air filled with the smell of burned metal and ozone from the energy weapons. When he finished, there was complete silence in the training bay. Even the aliens who had seen this demonstration before looked impressed. The human soldiers stared in shock at the destruction the captain had caused in less than 30 seconds. "Now," Captain Vextar said, not even breathing hard from his display, "let us see what humans can do." Commander Yoon stepped forward. "Sir, perhaps we could start with something simple. Basic obstacle courses or marksmanship training." "Nonsense," the captain replied. "If humans are to be part of this coalition, they must prove they can handle real challenges." He gestured toward a complex obstacle course that combined elements from all the previous demonstrations. "Same course, same rules. Let us see how your species measures up." The human soldiers looked at each other nervously. The course was designed to test every kind of ability: speed, strength, coordination, and combat skills. It would be difficult for beings with the natural advantages they had just witnessed. For ordinary humans, it seemed impossible. "I will go first," said Private Lee Sung, one of the larger human soldiers. He was known for his strength and endurance back on Earth. Lee Sung approached the starting line with determination. When the signal sounded, he began running toward the first obstacle. He moved well for a human, but compared to what they had just seen from the other species, his pace seemed painfully slow. The first barrier was a wall 3 meters high with a smooth surface. The Veltari had boosted each other over it effortlessly. Li Sung had to use a rope that was provided for species without jumping ability. By the time he reached the top, precious seconds had been lost. The second obstacle required precision shooting while moving through a maze of barriers. The Krathan instructor had destroyed every target while moving at full speed. Li Sung had to slow down and aim carefully, missing several targets that he could not hit while in motion. Hana watched her fellow soldier struggle through the course. He was doing his best, but it was clear that humans were at a severe disadvantage. Around the training bay, she could see alien soldiers watching with expressions that ranged from pity to amusement. When Li Sung finally completed the course, his time was more than 3 times slower than the worst performance by any other species. He stood at the finish line, breathing hard and covered in sweat. Captain Vexistar looked at the time display and shook his head. "Pathetic," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is what Earth sends to represent their species? I have seen civilian cargo handlers move faster than this." Several more humans attempted the course with similar results. Each one tried their best, but none could come close to matching the abilities of the other species. Kim Tae became so flustered during his attempt that he fell off a balance beam and had to start that section over. "Perhaps," Captain Vexistar said after watching the 6th human failure, "we should design a special course for humans, something more appropriate for your limited capabilities." Hana had been leaning against a wall, watching the proceedings with her usual calm expression. When she heard the captain's comment, she yawned and pushed herself off the wall. "I will try the regular course," she said, walking toward the starting line. Captain Vextar looked surprised. "Private Lee Hana, was it? Did you not just watch 6 of your fellow humans fail completely at this challenge?" Hana shrugged. "I did, but I would still like to try." "Very well," the captain said with what might have been amusement. "But when you fail as badly as the others, I want no complaints about the difficulty being unfair to humans." Hana nodded and took her position at the starting line. Around the training bay, hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. She could feel their attention, but it did not make her nervous. She had been watched by hostile audiences before. "Ready?" Captain Vextar called out. Hana rolled her shoulders to loosen them up. "Ready, sir?" The starting signal sounded, and Hana began moving toward the first obstacle. Her pace looked casual, almost leisurely compared to the desperate speed the other humans had attempted. Some of the watching aliens began making what sounded like amused comments in their various languages, but as Hana approached the 3-meter wall, something unexpected happened. Instead of using the rope like the others, she took 3 quick steps and leaped straight up, catching the top of the wall with her fingertips. She pulled herself over in one smooth motion and dropped to the other side without pause. A murmur went through the crowd of watching soldiers. That jump should have been impossible for a human, but Hana had made it look effortless. She continued through the course, moving with the same unhurried pace. At the shooting gallery, she drew the provided weapon and began firing while walking steadily forward. Every shot hit its target dead center, even the ones that required shooting around corners or through narrow gaps. By the time she reached the final obstacle, the training bay had become completely quiet. Even Captain Vexistar was staring in disbelief as this small human woman completed challenges that had seemed impossible for her species just minutes before. Hana crossed the finish line and checked the time display. Her score was not just good. For a human, it was competitive with some of the alien performances they had witnessed. The next few days of training passed in a blur of tests, exercises, and evaluations. Captain Vextar seemed determined to prove that Hana's performance had been a lucky accident. He designed increasingly difficult challenges, always making sure to demonstrate them first with his own superhuman Krathan abilities. Each morning brought new tests of speed, strength, and combat skills. The other species continued to excel in their areas of natural advantage. The Veltari moved through team coordination exercises like a single organism. The Shardun withstood attacks that would have vaporized ordinary soldiers. The 6-legged, Garathi navigated through toxic environments that would kill most beings in seconds. Meanwhile, most of the human soldiers continued to struggle. Kim Tae improved slightly each day, but he was still far behind the alien standards. Private Lee. Sung managed to complete most courses, but his times remained slow by galactic measures. Commander Yoon watched his soldiers with growing concern, knowing that their performance reflected on all of humanity. Hana, however, continued to surprise everyone. No matter what challenge Captain Vexitar presented, she completed it with the same casual efficiency. She never seemed to struggle or strain, never appeared to be giving her full effort. Most disturbing of all, she often looked bored during the most dangerous exercises. On the fourth day, Captain Vexitar introduced Blade combat training. The weapons room contained thousands of different combat implements from across the galaxy. Energy swords that could cut through starship hulls, plasma whips that struck with the heat of small suns, and traditional metal blades forged with techniques perfected over millennia. Combat with edged weapons requires the highest level of skill, the captain announced to the assembled trainees. Reaction time, spatial awareness, and physical coordination must all work together perfectly. One mistake means death. He selected a curved blade with a crystalline edge that seemed to bend light around itself. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy. This is a Krathan warblade, forged in the gravity wells of our home system. The edge exists partially in another dimension, allowing it to cut through any known material. Captain Vexitar moved to the center of the training area and began demonstrating basic forms. His forearms moved the blade through complex patterns that created trails of distorted space in the air. The speed was incredible. The weapons seemed to be everywhere at once, striking at imaginary enemies from impossible angles. The Krathan. Blade masters have trained for centuries to perfect these techniques, he said without slowing his demonstration. We can strike faster than most species can think. Our reflexes are enhanced by genetic modifications that take decades to complete. He finished his demonstration by slicing through a series of metal targets arranged around the room. The blade passed through them without resistance, leaving perfectly smooth cuts. The severed pieces fell to the floor with loud clanging sounds. Now, Captain Vexitar said, you will practice basic defensive forms. Partner exercises only. No live blades until you prove you will not kill each other immediately. The alien students paired off and began practicing with training weapons. The Veltari worked in perfect synchronization, their movements flowing, like a choreographed dance. The Shardun practiced slowly, but with absolute precision, their crystalline bodies reflecting the practice blades in prismatic patterns. The human soldiers looked uncertain. Most had some experience with combat knives or bayonets, but nothing like the advanced blade work being demonstrated around them. Commander Yoon paired them off and began teaching basic defensive positions. Hana found herself partnered with Kim Tae, who was sweating nervously despite the training room's cool temperature. I have never been good with blades, he admitted quietly. I always preferred ranged weapons. It is not so different, Hana said, picking up one of the practice weapons. The training blade was made of some kind of energy field contained in a sword-shaped frame. It would deliver a painful shock if it made contact, but would not cause permanent injury. Just think of it as a very short-range weapon. They began practicing the basic forms that Captain Vexitar had shown them. Kim Tae was slow and awkward, but he gradually began to understand the movements. Hana moved through the exercises with her usual efficiency, correcting his mistakes with gentle guidance. After an hour of practice, Captain Vexitar called for attention. Some of you are beginning to understand the basics, he said, his eyes scanning the room. But understanding and true skill are very different things. Who would like to demonstrate their progress against a more challenging opponent? Several of the alien students volunteered eagerly. Captain Vexitar selected a Veltari warrior who had been performing particularly well. The insect being moved forward with its characteristic perfect posture and precise movements. The demonstration was brief and one-sided. Captain Vexitar moved at about half the speed he had shown earlier, but it was still far faster than the Veltari could match. The training blade touched the alien student a dozen times in as many seconds. each contact producing a sharp buzzing sound from the energy field. Acceptable for a beginner, the captain said dismissively. But you still think too slowly. In real combat, you would be dead before you realized the fight had begun. He looked around the room again. Anyone else? Perhaps one of our human guests would like to show us what Earth's warriors can accomplish? The human soldiers exchanged nervous glances. They had all seen how fast Captain Vextar could move even when he was holding back. Fighting him seemed like asking to be humiliated in front of the entire class. Hana yawned and raised her hand. I will try, sir. Kim Tae grabbed her arm. Hana, no. You saw what he did to the Veltari. They are supposed to be really good at this stuff. She patted his shoulder reassuringly. It will be fine, Kim. It is just practice. Captain Vextar's expression changed to something that might have been pleasure. Since Hana's unexpected performance on the obstacle course, he had been looking for ways to prove that her success was just luck. Blade combat required years of training and genetic advantages that humans simply did not possess. Excellent, he said, selecting another war blade from the weapons rack. This one was slightly smaller than the first, but it still hummed with deadly energy. We will use live blades for this demonstration. The training weapons are too slow to provide a proper test of reflexes. Commander Yoon stepped forward quickly. Sir, perhaps that is not wise. Live blade combat between different species can result in serious injuries. Captain Vextar waved one of his hands dismissively. I have perfect control of my weapons, Commander. Your soldier will be perfectly safe as long as she follows instructions. He turned to Hana with a cold smile. You will attempt to block or evade my attacks. I will use a standard training sequence, 5 strikes at quarter speed to test your basic reflexes. Hana nodded and picked up a training blade. The energy weapon felt strange in her hands, lighter than it looked but somehow more solid than normal matter. She took a basic defensive stance as she had been taught. Are you sure about this? Kim Tae called out. You do not have to prove anything. Hana looked over at him and shrugged. I am curious to see how Krathan blade work compares to human techniques. Captain Vextar raised his 4 arms, positioning his war blades in an attack formation. Around the training room, every conversation stopped as soldiers from multiple species turned to watch. Live blade demonstrations were rare and dangerous. Accidents were not uncommon even among experienced warriors. Ready yourself, human, the captain said. Try not to disappoint your species too badly. Hana rolled her shoulders and settled into her stance. She looked relaxed, almost bored, as if she were about to participate in a casual sparring match rather than face one of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. I am ready when you are, sir. Captain Vextar's muscles tensed as he prepared to begin his attack sequence. Despite his promise to use quarter speed, his natural reflexes were still far beyond human norms. The first strike would come faster than most beings could track, designed to test whether she could even see the attack coming. The training room fell completely silent except for the humming of the energy blades. Hundreds of alien eyes focused on the small human woman who stood calmly in the center of the combat area, waiting for an attack that should be impossible for her to survive. Captain Vextar had been looking forward to this moment since the humans arrived at the station. Finally, he would demonstrate once and for all why some species were meant to be warriors, while others were meant to serve in support roles. He smiled with all 4 of his mouths and began his attack. Captain Vexistar launched forward with explosive speed. His warblade cut through the air in a diagonal slash that would have taken Hana's head clean off her shoulders. The attack was faster than his promised quarter speed, closer to his full combat velocity. Around the training room, even the other instructors looked surprised at the intensity of the strike. But something impossible happened in that fraction of a second. Hana was in the middle of another yawn, her left hand covering her mouth in a gesture of casual boredom. Without looking directly at the captain, without changing her relaxed posture, she reached out with her right hand and caught the energy blade between her thumb and forefinger. The weapon stopped completely. The deadly edge that could cut through starship armor was held motionless by 2 human fingers. The humming sound of the blade continued, but it could not move forward or backward by even a millimeter. The training room became absolutely silent. Every being present stared in shock at what they were witnessing. Several alien soldiers made choking sounds as they tried to process what their eyes were telling them. Captain Vextar's forearms strained against the blade, trying to pull it free from Hana's casual grip. His muscles bulged with effort, but the weapon did not budge. His four eyes widened in disbelief as he realized that this small human woman was not only holding his blade, but doing so with no apparent effort while completing her yawn. "Oh," Hana said, finishing her yawn and looking at the blade with mild curiosity. "Sorry about that, sir. You said to block your strike, but I was not really paying attention to the exact instructions. Did you want me to use my practice weapon instead of just catching yours?" She released the blade, and Captain Vextar stumbled backward, nearly losing his balance. The warblade felt normal in his hands again, but he could see small indentations where her fingers had gripped the energy field. That should have been completely impossible. Commander Yoon closed his eyes and muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer or a curse. The other human soldiers were staring at Hana with expressions of amazement and growing understanding. Kim Tae was the first to speak. "Hana," he said quietly, "how did you do that?" She looked at him with the same calm expression she always wore. "Do what?" "You just caught a Krathan war blade with your bare hand while yawning," said Private Lee Sung. "That blade can cut through anything." Hana shrugged. "It was not moving that fast. I had plenty of time to react." Captain Vexistar finally found his voice. "Not moving that fast?" he repeated in disbelief. "I was moving at combat speed. That strike should have been faster than human reflexes can detect, much less counter." "Were you?" Hana asked, sounding genuinely curious. "It seemed quite slow to me. Very controlled and precise, but not particularly fast." The captain looked down at his blade, then back at the human woman who had just casually stopped his attack. Around the training room, alien soldiers were beginning to whisper among themselves in dozens of different languages. The sound grew louder as more beings tried to understand what they had just witnessed. "Impossible," Captain Vextar said. "Humans do not have the reflexes for blade combat. Your species lacks the genetic modifications necessary for high-speed fighting. Your reaction times are documented as being far below galactic standards." Hana tilted her head slightly as if considering his words. "Sir, may I ask what you consider to be normal human reaction times?" "Your species averages 0.25 seconds to respond to visual stimuli," the captain replied automatically. "Krathan, responses average 0.003 seconds. We are more than 80 times faster than humans." Hana said thoughtfully. "That does seem slow. But sir, where did that information come from?" Captain Vextar looked confused by the question. "From the Coalition databases, of course. Earth provided complete biological and physical specifications for your species when you applied for membership." "Commander," Yoon stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Captain, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," Vextar said firmly. "If there has been some kind of error in the human specifications, it affects the training of every soldier here. Explain to me how this woman just caught my blade." Commander Yoon looked around the training room at the hundreds of alien faces watching him expectantly. He had hoped to avoid this conversation for as long as possible, but it seemed the secret was about to come out. "Sir," he said carefully, "the biological data that Earth provided to the Coalition was accurate for baseline humans." "Baseline humans?" Captain Vexitar repeated. "Yes, sir. Ordinary humans living in normal Earth environments." Commander Yoon paused and looked at his soldiers. "However, the humans selected for this training program are not baseline." "What does that mean?" demanded the captain. Hana spoke up before Commander Yoon could answer. "Sir, could I ask what the gravity level is here on the station?" Captain Vextar looked puzzled by the change of subject. "Standard galactic gravity, 0.32 Earth normal. We reduced it from normal station gravity to accommodate weaker species like humans." 0.32, Hana repeated thoughtfully. She looked down at her feet and shifted her weight slightly. "That explains why everything feels so light here." "Light?" Captain Vextar was becoming more confused by the moment. Hana nodded. "Yes, sir. On Earth, we train at full gravity, which is about 3 times stronger than what we have here. We also wear weighted training gear to simulate combat conditions. She reached under her training uniform and pulled out what looked like a control device. Commander Yoon told us to keep wearing these while we were on the station, but I think it might be time to adjust the settings. What is that device? Captain Vextar asked. Weight simulator, Hana replied, making adjustments to the control panel. It uses localized gravity fields to add mass to our bodies during training. I have been wearing about 200 kilograms of additional weight since we arrived. The training room erupted in shocked voices from dozens of species. 200 kilograms was more than the body weight of most adult beings. The idea that someone could move normally while carrying that much extra mass was staggering. Captain Vextar stared at the device in Hana's hands. You have been training while carrying 200 kilograms of extra weight? Standard Earth military protocol, Commander Yoon said quietly. We train heavy so we can fight light. Hana finished adjusting her weight simulator and clipped it back under her uniform. There, that is better. I reduced it to 50 kilograms, much more comfortable. She looked around the training room at the staring aliens and yawned again. Sir, did you want to continue with the blade practice? I feel like I'm just getting warmed up. Captain Vextar looked down at the war blade in his hands, then back at the human woman, who had just revealed she had been fighting at a severe disadvantage the entire time. His worldview was beginning to crack as he realized that everything he thought he knew about human capabilities was wrong. Private Lee Hana, he said slowly. What would happen if you turned off that weight simulator completely? Hana considered the question seriously. I'm not sure, sir. I have never tried fighting without any additional weight in low gravity like this. It might be interesting to find out. Around the training room, alien soldiers were backing away from the humans as they began to understand the implications of what they were hearing. If the humans had been holding back this much, what were they really capable of? Captain Vexitar realized that his demonstration had not proven human weakness at all. Instead, it had revealed that he had no idea what he was dealing with. And judging by Hana's calm expression, she was still not showing him her full abilities. The training room remained frozen in stunned silence for several long moments after Hana's revelation about the weight simulators. Captain Vextar stood motionless, his war blade hanging forgotten in one of his 4 hands as he tried to process what he had just learned. Finally, Commander Yoon stepped forward and activated his own weight simulator control. Perhaps it is time for a full explanation, he said to the assembled alien soldiers. Earth has been less than completely honest about human capabilities. He began making adjustments to his device while he spoke. When humanity first made contact with the Galactic Coalition, we discovered that our home world was considered extremely dangerous by galactic standards. Earth's gravity is 3 times the galactic average. Our atmosphere contains gases that are toxic to most species. Our weather patterns are so violent that they would be classified as natural disasters on most worlds. Around the training room, alien soldiers were listening with growing amazement and concern. Several species had representatives backing toward the exits. We realized that if we revealed humanity's true physical capabilities, other species might see us as a threat rather than potential allies, Commander Yoon continued. So we provided data based on humans living in artificial environments with reduced gravity and enhanced atmospheric controls. Baseline humans, as we called them. Captain Vextar found his voice. You lied to the entire coalition about what your species could do. We withheld some information, Commander Yoon corrected diplomatically. The data we provided was accurate for humans living in controlled environments. We simply did not mention that military personnel train and operate under much harsher conditions. Hana finished adjusting her weight simulator and looked around the room with interest. This is much better, she said, moving her arms and legs, experimentally. I can actually feel the difference in air resistance now. How much weight were you carrying before? Asked Kim Tae, making his own adjustments. About 4 times my body weight, Hana replied casually. Plus the gear weight, environmental resistance, and gravity differential. It was like trying to fight while swimming through mud. Captain Vextar was beginning to understand the full scope of what had been hidden from them. Your entire species has been training under conditions that would kill most galactic races? Not our entire species, Commander Yoon corrected. Civilians live much more comfortable lives. But military personnel, yes? We train under the assumption that we might have to fight on worlds even more hostile than Earth. Private Lee Sung had finished adjusting his own simulator and was moving around the training area with obvious relief. Sir, this feels incredible. I had forgotten what it was like to move normally. Define normally, Captain Vextar said with growing dread. Lee Sung walked over to one of the practice targets, a solid metal post designed to withstand impacts from most galactic species. He drew back his fist and punched it casually. The metal post, which weighed several hundred kilograms, flew across the room and embedded itself in the far wall. The alien soldiers who had been watching began making panicked sounds in their various languages. Several of the instructors activated emergency communication devices, probably calling for backup or evacuation procedures. Hana watched Lee Sung's demonstration with mild interest. That was a bit much, she commented. You are going to give everyone the wrong impression about humans. The wrong impression? Captain Vexitar repeated weakly. We are not violent people, Hana explained patiently. We just happen to come from a world where everything is trying to kill us all the time. It makes us somewhat harder to kill than most species are used to dealing with. Around the training room, alien soldiers were having heated conversations in their native languages. The Veltari group mind seemed to be having some kind of collective breakdown, their perfect coordination replaced by chaotic individual movements. Several Shardan had activated what looked like defensive force fields around their crystalline bodies. Commander Yoon raised his voice to address the room. There is no need for panic. Humans have no hostile intentions toward any coalition species. We requested to join this training program to learn from our allies and to show that we can work together peacefully. Peacefully? Captain Vexitar gestured toward the metal post embedded in the wall. Your soldier just demonstrated that humans can destroy hardened military equipment with their bare hands. Hana looked over at the damaged wall and shrugged. Sir, that was just Lee Sung showing off. Most of us have better control than that. She paused and added thoughtfully, although to be fair, we have been carrying extra weight for days now. Everyone is probably excited to move freely again. As if to prove her point, Kim Tae attempted a simple jumping exercise and accidentally launched himself nearly to the ceiling of the training room. He landed gracefully but looked embarrassed by the excessive height he had achieved. Sorry, he called down to the watching aliens. I am still getting used to the reduced weight. Captain Vextar slowly turned to Commander Yoon. How many humans know the truth about their capabilities compared to other species? Most military personnel are aware that we are stronger and faster than galactic averages, Commander Yoon replied. But they are also trained in restraint and diplomatic protocols. We do not want to intimidate our allies. Intimidate, Captain? Vextar laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Commander, I have spent my entire military career believing that Krathen were the supreme warriors in the galaxy. I have just watched one of your soldiers catch my fastest attack while yawning and treat it like a minor inconvenience. Hana looked genuinely surprised by his distress. Sir, your blade work really was quite impressive, very precise and controlled. I was mostly trying to figure out why you were moving so carefully. Carefully? Captain Vexitar stared at her in disbelief. That was a full combat attack. Was it? Hana tilted her head curiously. It seemed like you were holding back quite a bit. I mean, there were at least 6 openings in your attack pattern that you did not exploit, and your follow-through suggested you were more concerned with avoiding injury than maximizing effectiveness. The captain's forearms began to shake slightly. I was trying not to kill you. That was very considerate, Hana said approvingly. But if you want to see real blade work, you should visit Earth sometime. Our kindergarten students practice with wooden swords as part of their physical education curriculum. Kindergarten students? 5- and 6-year-old children, Commander Yoon explained quietly. Basic combat training is considered essential education on Earth. The environment is too dangerous for civilians to remain completely defenseless. Captain Vextar sat down heavily on a nearby bench, his legs no longer able to support his weight. Around the training room, alien soldiers were beginning to evacuate despite Commander Yoon's assurances about human peaceful intentions. Hana noticed the general exodus and looked concerned for the first time since the training began. "Are we doing something wrong?" she asked Commander Yoon. "Everyone seems upset. I think," Commander Yoon said carefully, "that our new allies are having some difficulty adjusting to the reality of human capabilities. Should we put our weight simulators back to full settings?" Kim Tae suggested. "Maybe it would help if we went back to moving slowly." Captain Vextar looked up from the bench with an expression of mixed terror and fascination. "Privately, Hana, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, sir. What do you consider to be a challenging opponent?" Hana thought about the question seriously. "Well, sir, I suppose it would depend on the type of challenge. For blade work, probably a master-level instructor from one of Earth's advanced combat schools. For general combat, maybe a veteran soldier with at least 10 years of experience in high-gravity environments." She paused and added, "Of course, the most challenging opponents are usually other humans. We know each other's techniques and capabilities, so fights tend to be much more difficult and unpredictable." Captain Vextar nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had suspected. "And how would you rate my skills compared to these Earth instructors?" Hana looked embarrassed by the question. "Sir, I would not want to give offense. Please be honest." Hana sighed. "Well, your technique is quite elegant, and your form is very good. With some practice in higher gravity and more aggressive sparring partners, you might eventually be competitive with our intermediate students." Captain Vextar closed his eyes and was quiet for a long moment. When he opened them again, he looked directly at Commander Yoon. "I formally request transfer to Earth for advanced combat training." "Sir?" Commander Yoon looked surprised. "If humanity has been restraining itself to avoid intimidating the rest of us, then I have been living in a fantasy about my own abilities," Captain Vextar said firmly. "I want to learn what real warriors are capable of." Hana brightened up for the first time since the training began. "That would be wonderful, sir. You could start with our basic instructor courses. I think you would really enjoy working with the advanced students." "How advanced?" Captain Vextar asked. Hana smiled. "Well, the really advanced students are the ones who teach the instructors.